In the quiet heartland of America, where the vast Kansas plains stretched endlessly under a sky often painted in hues of soft blue, a strange silence settled over Camp Concordia in the autumn of 1943. This was a place of meticulous order, a sprawling network of barracks, fences, and watchtowers designed to contain and process thousands of Axis prisoners of war. Every man, every transfer, every meal ration was logged, filed, and stamped with an almost obsessive precision. Yet within this ironclad system, men would simply vanish. How could a human being, a prisoner of war under strict military supervision, disappear without a trace from a system built on absolute accountability? It's a paradox that defies logic, a ghost story whispered through official records, and it begins not with a dramatic escape, but with an almost imperceptible bureaucratic anomaly. Before we delve into the unsettling details of this forgotten chapter, I'm curious, where are you watching this story unfold from today? The air at Camp Concordia often carried the dry scent of prairie dust, mingled with the faint metallic tang of barbed wire. For Private Kenji Tanaka, a young Japanese soldier captured in the Aleutian Islands, his arrival here in October 1943 was a blur of exhaustion and bewildering procedure. He stood in a line that snaked through a stark, fluorescent-lit processing tent, the crisp snap of new forms being handed out, the dull thud of rubber stamps echoing around him. His boots, still caked with the mud of a distant battlefield, felt heavy on the rough concrete floor. Each document was handled by stern-faced American sergeants, their movements precise, their voices clipped. His identification card was issued, his photograph taken, and his personal effects meticulously itemized before being sealed away. This was the American way. Everything recorded, everything accounted for. Captain Robert Miller, the camp's chief administrative officer, prided himself on this very system. His office, a cramped space filled with the rustle of ledger pages and the low hum of a single desk fan, was a fortress of paperwork. Miller often ran his hand over the smooth, cool surface of his polished oak desk, a testament to order in a chaotic world. "No man enters or leaves this camp without my signature," he'd often declare, his voice firm, leaving no room for doubt. Private Tanaka's transfer list was indeed signed by Captain Miller, his medical card stamped with the official seal, his small canvas bag, tagged for barrack assignment. From that moment, Kenji Tanaka was an official entry, a number, a statistic within the vast, intricate machinery of the U.S. War Department. He was present, accounted for, and documented. Inside, life for the Japanese POWs, far from home, was a strange blend of rigid discipline and unexpected routine. They wore faded denim uniforms, their days structured by work details, meager meals, and the distant sound of American radio broadcasts filtering through the barracks. The sun beat down relentlessly on the camp's gravel paths in summer, while winter brought a biting wind that rattled the windows. Yet even as Tanaka settled into this new confined reality, an unseen thread was already beginning to fray. The meticulously kept records, the very bedrock of Captain Miller's pride, held a silent, disturbing secret. What unseen forces were already at play, preparing to unravel the existence of men like Tanaka? And how could such a perfect system fail so spectacularly that a prisoner could simply cease to exist on paper, only to resurface years later as an archaeological enigma unearthed by a farmer's plow? The answer lies in a series of choices made far from the watchful eyes of Concordia. Choices that twisted bureaucracy into something darker. The ink on Tanaka's transfer papers to Camp Hearn, Texas, was barely dry, the official stamps still crisp on the heavy cardstock. When his journey continued, he felt the rhythmic sway of the troop train, the grit of coal dust settling on his faded denim uniform, as he journeyed southward across the vast American expanse. The Kansas plains gave way to the dusty fields of Oklahoma, then the sprawling sun-baked landscape of Texas. Camp Hearn, near the town of Hearn, Texas, was another world entirely, larger and even more regimented than Concordia. Its barracks baking under a relentless sun, the air thick with the scent of dry earth and distant oil fields. This was his official destination, logged and acknowledged by the War Department, a place where theoretically every man was accounted for. Yet even as he settled into the sweltering Texas heat, an invisible hand was already redrawing his fate, a silent subversion of the very system Captain Miller so proudly upheld. Weeks later, far from the meticulous ledgers of Camp Concordia, a handwritten memo, scrawled on a plain memo pad, began its journey through unofficial channels. This document, lacking the proper seals and signatures, indicated a second unrecorded transfer for Private Tanaka. It was a directive born of desperation, not protocol. Major General Arthur Hayes, a regional commander whose career had been built on order, now faced a different kind of chaos, a late harvest threatening vital wartime food supplies across the heartland. The wheat, the corn, the soybeans, all critical for the war effort, were at risk, and labor was scarce. Hayes, under immense pressure, bypassed standard procedures, invoking national security priority to secure immediate unregistered labor. His order, a quiet whisper in the bureaucratic storm, sent Tanaka and a handful of other Japanese POWs not to another official camp, but to a smaller, temporary labor site in rural Oklahoma. This was a place that existed almost entirely off the main POW registry system, a ghost camp in the vast American landscape. Imagine the journey: another rattling train, then perhaps a dusty truck ride down unpaved roads, the drone of cicadas replacing the distant sounds of a military base. The air grew heavy with the smell of rich, dark soil, not the dry, sparse scent of prairie. These men, meticulously catalogued at Concordia, were now being diverted into an administrative black hole, their new location known only to a select few, their presence a quiet secret. This shadow system relied on the urgency of wartime and the sheer scale of the bureaucracy itself. It was a blind spot, a small crack in the otherwise impenetrable wall of military protocol. If stories like Kenji Tanaka's, tales of hidden histories and the quiet subversion of wartime systems, compel you to look deeper, consider joining our community here at WWW Stories. Your support helps us uncover these forgotten fragments of the past, ensuring they are never truly lost and allowing us to continue this vital investigation. The Oklahoma farm, isolated and demanding, became Tanaka's new unlisted prison. Here, the guards were fewer, the rules less clear, and the work grueling, defined by the rhythm of the land rather than the clock of military precision. The sun beat down on their backs as they toiled in the fields, the earth clinging to their boots, a stark contrast to the sterile environment of the official camps. No official record keeper noted their arrival. No new identification cards were issued. For all intents and purposes, Kenji Tanaka, the soldier captured in the Aleutians, the prisoner processed in Kansas, had simply ceased to exist. What truly transpired in these unlisted camps? And how many other men shared Tanaka's silent, administrative disappearance into the heartland? Life on the Oklahoma farm was brutally simple, a stark departure from the regimented, if sterile, existence of Camp Concordia or Hearn. The smell of freshly turned earth, rich and dark, permeated everything, clinging to their clothes and skin. Tanaka's hands, once accustomed to military drills, now bled from calluses formed by the rough wooden handles of plows and hoes. Each morning, before the sun had fully burned off the dew that shimmered on the vast fields, they were roused by the clang of a cast-iron bell, its echo swallowed by the wide-open sky. The guards here were not career military men, but often local farmers or deputies, their faces etched with the harsh lines of rural life, their vigilance sometimes lax, sometimes overly harsh. The line between prisoner and coerced laborer blurred, as their days were consumed by the relentless demands of the harvest, pushing their bodies to the brink under the oppressive summer sun, the heat radiating off the soil in shimmering waves. This was not a prison designed for rehabilitation or even strict containment. It was a factory of human effort, extracting every ounce of energy for a desperate national need. The existence of such ghost camps was a tightly guarded secret, a necessary evil in the eyes of officials like Major General Hayes. These were not the sprawling, well-documented facilities, but small, makeshift sites, often utilizing abandoned farmhouses or temporary shelters, their locations known only to a select few in the War Department's agricultural liaison offices. Decades later, the quiet persistence of a retired civilian archivist, Martha Jenkins, would begin to peel back the layers of this forgotten history. Jenkins, a woman with a keen intellect and a memory like a steel trap, spent countless hours sifting through dusty boxes in the National Archives. She often described the dry, papery scent of old documents, a smell that spoke of forgotten lives. It was in one such obscure box, tucked away beneath routine supply requisitions, that she found it, a handwritten memo, its paper brittle with age, detailing expedited labor assignments to unlisted sites. The memo, lacking official letterhead, bore the unmistakable hurried scrawl of a junior officer, almost certainly acting on a direct, unrecorded order from Major General Hayes himself. It was a chilling echo of Tanaka's fate, a bureaucratic whisper confirming the system's deliberate blind spot. This document, seemingly innocuous, connected the dots between a desperate commander and the vanished men. But what did these expedited assignments truly entail for the men caught in their grip, and what other secrets did these shadow camps hold? The conditions in these unlisted camps were often far harsher than their official counterparts. Without the oversight of standard military protocol, abuses were more common, and the line between discipline and cruelty often blurred. The very isolation that made these camps effective for their purpose also made them vulnerable to unchecked authority. It's here that another piece of the puzzle emerges from the archives, a faded, smudged incident report from a local Oklahoma sheriff's office, dated early 1946. Sheriff Thomas O'Connell, a man known for his quiet demeanor and sharp observational skills, had penned the report. He often recalled the suffocating humidity of summer evenings in his small, cluttered office, the air thick with the smell of stale coffee and ink. As he meticulously documented the day's events, the report referenced a disturbance involving unregistered foreign laborers at a remote farm near Stillwater, Oklahoma. Stillwater, a place far removed from the official maps for POWs, yet it was precisely where men like Tanaka had been sent. The report was brief, almost dismissive, but the words unregistered and disturbance hinted at a darker reality, a system operating beyond legal bounds, where the disappearances of Japanese POWs were not always silent. The very existence of this report, a local law enforcement document, indicated a crack in the wall of secrecy, a brief flicker of light into the administrative black hole where these men had been swallowed. The question now wasn't just how they vanished, but what happened to them after the system forgot their names, and what would it take for the truth to finally be unearthed, literally, from the Oklahoma soil. The disturbance at the remote Oklahoma farm, referenced in Sheriff O'Connell's faded report, was more than a mere squabble. It was a violent eruption born from the desperate conditions that Major General Hayes's expedited labor assignments had created. Imagine the scene, the relentless Oklahoma sun, baking the fields to a shimmering haze, the air thick with the smell of sweat, dust, and the metallic tang of fear. The work itself was backbreaking, a non-stop grind from dawn until dusk, pushing men to their physical and psychological limits. Unlike the official POW camps, where International Red Cross inspections, however infrequent, offered a semblance of oversight, these temporary sites operated in a legal and moral vacuum. The guards, often local men deputized for the task, lacked formal military training in prisoner management, and their authority was absolute, unchecked by the usual chain of command. A former farmhand, Harold Hal Jensen, who lived near Stillwater and occasionally delivered supplies to one such site, later recalled the stark difference. He remembered the quiet, almost fearful demeanor of the Japanese laborers, their movements slow with exhaustion, their eyes downcast. He'd often catch the faint, acrid smell of burning wood from a distant cook fire, and the occasional sharp, angry shout carried on the wind, a sound that always made him quicken his pace. Jensen, in a 1978 interview with local historian Dr. Evelyn Reed, described a palpable tension, a feeling that something was deeply wrong, a quiet oppression hanging over the fields like the summer humidity. This environment was ripe for tragedy. The sheriff's report, though terse, detailed an altercation that resulted in serious injury to one of the unregistered foreign laborers and the subsequent pacification of several others. The official narrative, designed to bury the incident, painted it as a simple disciplinary matter. But for men like Kenji Tanaka and the others assigned to these ghost camps, such events were a stark reminder of their precarious existence. They were men without official status, their lives effectively erased from the military's meticulous ledgers. Their families back in Japan, already reeling from the war's devastation, would eventually receive the crushing news: missing, presumed deceased. The vagueness of the message, devoid of specifics, was a cruel byproduct of the very system that had swallowed their loved ones whole. The official records, as Martha Jenkins discovered, simply showed Tanaka's transfer to Texas, then a blank space, no repatriation, no definitive end, just an administrative black hole where a human life used to be. The paradox of a man vanishing inside a system designed for total control, a man meticulously accounted for one day and utterly erased the next, remains unsettling. It forces us to confront the uncomfortable truth that even in an era of unprecedented documentation, human lives could still become footnotes, then disappear entirely. The Kansas memory of Camp Concordia, a place where thousands of men were supposed to be held and then released, held no answers for the curious. The official story remained intact, undisturbed by these quiet disappearances. Years passed, the war ended, the world rebuilt, and the vast American heartland, once a silent stage for these hidden dramas, returned to its rhythms of planting and harvest. The temporary labor camps were dismantled, their makeshift structures either repurposed or left to decay, swallowed by the prairie grass and forgotten by all but a handful of people. The land itself, however, held its secrets closer. It absorbed the sweat, the tears, and perhaps the final moments of men like Kenji Tanaka, becoming a silent vault of forgotten histories. It was 5 years after the war had ended, in the spring of 1950, when a new chapter in this buried narrative began to unfold. The air carried the fresh, earthy scent of newly turned soil, a promise of new life after the long winter. A farmer named John Abernathy, a man with calloused hands and a deep respect for the land, had recently acquired a new parcel of acreage near the Oklahoma border, not far from Stillwater. His tractor, an old but reliable Fordson, rumbled across the field, its plow biting deep into the rich, dark earth. Each pass exposed a fresh ribbon of soil, cool and damp to the touch, ready for planting. Abernathy had spent his entire life working this land, feeling its subtle shifts, understanding its silent language. He knew every rock, every dip, every change in texture. But on this particular morning, as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the freshly tilled rows, his plow struck something metallic and unyielding, something that resisted the earth's quiet embrace. The jarring impact sent a shiver up the tractor's frame, a sound that cut through the steady drone of the engine, a distinct thud that spoke of an unnatural presence beneath the surface. He stopped the engine, the sudden silence amplified by the vastness of the field. What could be buried so deep in this land, a place supposedly untouched by the war's hidden chapters? If this story, of men vanishing within a system meant to hold them, and of secrets unearthed years later, makes you reconsider what you thought you knew about World War II, please consider leaving a like. It helps us understand which stories resonate most deeply, guiding our ongoing investigation into these forgotten corners of history. Abernathy climbed down from his tractor, the ground still vibrating slightly from the impact, and walked towards the disturbance, his boots sinking slightly into the soft, dark soil. The object, partially exposed, glinted faintly in the morning sun, an unnatural glint amidst the natural world, waiting to reveal a truth the system had tried desperately to bury. John Abernathy dismounted his Fordson, the engine's sudden silence amplifying the vast quiet of the Oklahoma field. The air, cool and damp, carried the rich, earthy scent of newly disturbed soil. But beneath it, a faint metallic tang now pricked at his senses. He knelt, his calloused fingers probing the dark earth where his plow had snagged. The object was unyielding, a dense mass buried just beneath the surface. He began to dig, the soil crumbling away easily from the obstruction. Soon a rounded, corroded surface emerged, the color of rust and dried blood, almost indistinguishable from the earth itself. With a final heave, he pulled it free. A military-issue mess kit. Its aluminum surface pitted and scarred by years underground, but still unmistakably a piece of wartime equipment. The cold, heavy metal felt alien in his hands, a stark contrast to the familiar warmth of the soil. What story did this forgotten piece of a soldier's life hold? Buried so far from any known battlefield or official camp, he carried it to his farmhouse, the weight of it oddly significant. Under the harsh glare of his kitchen light, Abernathy carefully scraped away the clinging mud. The mess kit, once polished, now bore the texture of coarse sandpaper. As more of the grime fell away, he noticed the faint etching on the underside of the lid, almost completely obscured by corrosion. With painstaking effort, using a soft brush and a gentle hand, he cleaned the area. Slowly, letters emerged, crudely but clearly carved. K. Tanaka. A name, not a number, but a name, etched into an object found years after the war, in a field that was never supposed to be a burial ground for military secrets. Abernathy, a man of quiet practicality, knew this was no ordinary find. The glint of steel, the cold weight of the metal, and now this inscribed name, all pointed to a deeper, more unsettling truth. He immediately contacted the local sheriff's office, the receiver of his rotary phone feeling heavy in his hand, his voice a low rumble as he described his discovery. The discovery of Kenji Tanaka's mess kit was the physical key that unlocked the administrative black hole. It was tangible proof, pulled from the very earth, that a Japanese prisoner of war, officially transferred to Camp Hearn, Texas, had somehow ended up buried in an unmarked field in rural Oklahoma. This single object, a humble personal possession, violently recontextualized everything historians thought they knew about POW management during the war. It was no longer a question of bureaucratic oversight, but of deliberate, systemic obfuscation. The mess kit, with its silent inscription, became a message from the forgotten, a chilling testament to a life erased by a system that claimed meticulous accountability. The cold aluminum, once a vessel for meager rations, now held the weight of a hidden history. This discovery resonated with the quiet investigation Martha Jenkins had been conducting for years in the National Archives. Her earlier find of the handwritten memo, detailing expedited labor assignments to unlisted sites, suddenly gained a terrifying specificity. Jenkins, a woman whose office often smelled of old paper and forgotten coffee, would later recall the surge of adrenaline she felt when she saw the news report about Abernathy's find, the cold clarity of a puzzle piece finally slotting into place. The memo, once an anomaly, now served as systemic corroboration. Major General Arthur Hayes's desperate, unrecorded orders to bypass protocol for farm labor were not just hypothetical. They had led to real men, like Kenji Tanaka, being diverted to ghost camps. And then there was Sheriff Thomas O'Call's fated incident report from 1946, referencing unregistered foreign laborers and a disturbance near Stillwater. The report, once an isolated curiosity, now illuminated the brutal reality of these unlisted sites. The mess kit, Jenkins' memo, and O'Connell's report, three disparate fragments, each a whisper from the past, now coalesced into a roaring truth. There was a shadow system operating beyond the law, where men simply disappeared. The implications were profound. The meticulous records, the official transfers, the strict military protocols, all had been deliberately circumvented. The paradox of men vanishing from a system designed for total control was explained not by a flaw, but by a calculated, desperate subversion. If this startling recontextualization of a forgotten chapter of World War II history makes you see the past through a different lens, please consider leaving a like on this video. Your engagement helps us bring these vital, untold stories to light, ensuring that the truths buried beneath years of silence are finally heard. The mess kit found by John Abernathy was not merely a relic. It was an indictment, a physical cry from a man swallowed by the very nation that held him captive. A man whose existence was erased, then unearthed, by the silent testimony of the earth itself. But what were the full devastating consequences of this shadow system? And what did Kenji Tanaka's discovery ultimately reveal about the fate of the other men who vanished? The discovery of Kenji Tanaka's mess kit and the subsequent official investigations it triggered forced a reckoning. The cold metallic object, pulled from the Oklahoma soil, exposed the national security priority as a thinly veiled excuse for an unauthorized labor program. The War Department, faced with undeniable physical evidence, corroborated by Jenkins' archival finds and O'Connell's report, could no longer maintain its silence. While a full public admission was carefully managed to avoid scandal, internal directives were immediately issued. Protocols for POW transfers were tightened, and a silent, painstaking review of thousands of wartime records began, seeking other anomalies. Though exact numbers remain elusive, historians like Dr. Evelyn Reed now estimate that dozens, perhaps hundreds, of Japanese and German POWs were subjected to similar expedited assignments to unlisted sites, their fates often left ambiguous. The paradox of men vanishing within a system designed for total control, it turned out, made a chilling kind of sense. The system itself, under immense wartime pressure, had quietly created the very black holes into which these men disappeared, then tried to bury the evidence. Tanaka's mess kit, a simple object, thus became a monument to those forgotten, a testament to the enduring power of truth to emerge from the deepest shadows. It underscored the human cost of bureaucratic expediency and the quiet courage of those like Martha Jenkins and John Abernathy, who refused to let the past remain buried. The earth, in its silent wisdom, eventually yields its secrets. The memory of Kenji Tanaka and the men like him now serves as a stark reminder that history is not always found in grand narratives, but often in the smallest, most personal objects unearthed by chance. What other hidden stories do you believe the land still holds, waiting for someone to listen? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and if you wish to continue exploring these untold chapters of history with us, consider subscribing to World War II Stories.